Eileen.
Hi,
Good. Thanks for being here. Hey, Mike. Oh, no. You got him. Well, that's what's important. That's what's important. Okay, so Yvel is here, and I understand Mike Barbas is going to be on speakerphone. All right, so we're just going to wait. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Brian, from here when you. Sick, vacation, et cetera, et cetera. So at the moment we don't have a quorum. However, we have one of them on the line. We have three of us here. One's on the line, that gives us 4. We're trying to bring in the second one on the line, which would give us 5. Then we got a quorum, and we're good. So we're working on it, just so you know. Yeah, that's right. Artie can go home and call in.
Yeah, let's all go.
Yeah, we'll all go home and call in.
Yes, I am.
All right, outstanding. Okay. Technology to the rescue. All right, I'm
wondering if you need to sit there for them to hear you.
Can you guys hear me? No? All right. Okay. Good. All right. I will call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join us. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Kasimis, could you do the honors on the public speaking tonight?
Sorry.
Okay, just for the record, so everybody knows, Evel Kravicore, myself, and Artie Kasimis are here in person. Brian Meek and Mike Barbas, who are both out of town or otherwise engaged, are on the speakerphone. We have a policy that allows remote participation in the board meetings, so that gives us the quorum of 5 members, and we're able to proceed with the meeting. So first item of business is public comments. Mr. Kasimis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I call your name, please come up to the podium. We need your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. I'll wave my hand when you have 30 seconds left, and then you can close it down. First is Lori Keegan.
Hey, Harry. Can you hand me the book? Thank you.
The first day of school is fast approaching.
Sorry, name and address first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lori Keegan, 2 Barjun Road. The first day of school is fast approaching. I'm here once again to speak to you about the State of Connecticut Public Act 11-232. The law states that all employees of schools, teachers, custodians, aides, and food service workers are to have training in bully prevention. I've taken on this campaign for Bart Pelos from Greenwich. Bart was bullied for many years and committed suicide on the first day of his sophomore year at Greenwich High School in 2013. His death affected me immensely. Since Bart's death, I have been actively involved in raising awareness about bullying. Through the efforts of myself and others, we erected a buddy bench at Cranberry Elementary School. For the past 2 years, we've organized a unity walk at West Middle School, and I am a proud member of the Norwalk Exchange Club. The Exchange Club's mission is to raise awareness about the many forms of child abuse. In the 4 years that Bart has passed, I am disheartened by the many suicides attributed to bullying amongst our youth. I stand before you again as a friendly reminder of the anti-bullying state statute. Bullying is a mean-spirited way to get to children who are the most vulnerable. We are not giving today's children the tools they need to fight back. In too many cases, the child's only relief is suicide. A child's suicide has devastating effects on his or her family and community at large. For some, the grieving process will never end. October is Bully Prevention Month. I am once again asking you to reach out to the principals of our schools and implore them to raise awareness of this important issue. At West Rocks, our principal, Dr. Moore, promotes tolerance and respect for others during the entire school year. The students at West Rocks are taught about inclusion in various ways, such as Mix It Up Day, where students are encouraged and required to sit with students they don't know about I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Somebody was talking on the phone.
They don't know during the lunch period. West Rocks also has a strong and vibrant community club. Students all year long do different things during the school year for the Notre Dame Elderly Home and Thanksgiving baskets for the West Rocks families who are in need. We need more inclusion in our schools. October is Bully Prevention Month in our country. I ask that our Board of Education ensures that all of our schools take measures to address this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Ms. Mary Jordan.
Good evening, Mary Jordan, 9 Mott Avenue, Norwalk. In the interests of this late start, I'm cutting a number of parts of this out. There are so many issues facing our district at the opening of the schools this year. I'm it's hard to know exactly where to begin. But prioritizing carefully, I will begin by thanking you and board members who are not present for your work on behalf of our students. I recently found myself defending the members of the Board of Education against some attacks that you were somehow in this position for the wrong reasons. I really do want to state clearly my belief that you all and the public, to the public generally, that I have faith in the motivation of all of you, and including those not present. We are all committed to the educational community here in Norwalk, to its improvement, and to the greatest and least of all of our students and our families. We may differ at how we arrive at our goals. We may differ on what those precise goals may be when we get down into the details. But our teachers generally, I personally, and the NFT institutionally are grateful for the service that you and other public officials are doing so that our students can learn better. I would like to offer you simply a list of noting the concerns. I'm not going to say anything about them. I think you know as well as I do how much we are all monitoring the state budget and our cares and concerns with regard to that. Our insurance settlement is heavily on our minds. We're eager to promote, and I'm very concerned about the timeline in front of us. I would welcome new staff and established staff in new roles, especially with regard to special education and middle schools. We are concerned about cleanliness and healthiness in our buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. And last, we have Mr. John Mosby.
Good evening tonight, board. My name is John Mosby. I'm going to be very brief tonight. I would like to say to the Board of Education that I wanted to just comment on the minutes and the booklets that we have. And I had an opportunity to read this book. And there's a lot of things in here that I feel that the public should be aware of. There's a lot of things that the public is not aware of. And we're not here tonight to start no trouble. We're here to help all the children. And I want to say one thing to the public. I want to thank the public for really doing a good job for my daughter when we run around and met the people. They were so nice to me and my family. We want to do the right thing in this town. And I want to say tonight to all of you public officials, you gentlemen better start to listen to us. All over this country, you see the American people are fed up. You don't even have the minority community are being shut out. If you gonna watch yourself, we ain't gonna have no minority on this Board of Education. You're headed to trouble. I want the public to know it. And I'm not afraid of nobody. God in heaven is looking down on me. Dr. King said he went on the mountaintop. Frederick Douglass said, give me liberty, give me jail. You gentlemen gonna have to start to listen to I see trouble. The Hispanics being mistreated. The minority being mistreated. They don't settle no committee. Y'all don't bring us to nothing. You hire people and don't even say nothing. You hire this new lady, never even mention to us. You privatizing all the schools, nobody know it. Gentlemen, the state and them got to get off the hell and do something. And I'm warning I've been in office 60 years, everybody know me. I'm not no troublemaker. Oh, you call trouble. I wouldn't be here no 60 years. I ain't never bothered nobody, never been in jail and never bothered. And I'm gonna say this, I was born in Virginia. Virginia's my home, Lynchburg, Virginia. And right there in Charlottesville, them some good people there. And don't get you wrong, I left there wearing the 50. But the South is so sweet. When you go home, they kiss you. The white and the black get along good. Gentlemen, if we don't get together and stop this foolishness in this country, we are headed for a disaster. So I want to say to you, board members, please meet with us and let us discuss some of these problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Adamowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to remind the board that time for convocation again and beginning a new school year. So we'll be holding convocation on August 25th, Friday the 25th. We have been thinking about how to change this up a little bit, make it more interesting, more relevant to the individual staff members involved. And you'll remember that convocation is for all our certificated staff. So this is teachers and administrators. We've also taken a look at what some other districts are doing in order to make it less traditional and, again, more focused on the instructional process. So we're going to try something this year. This is the year we started rotating a year ago, as you remember. Went to Norwalk High School. We're back to Brian McMahon. But we're going to try something a little different this year by having our secondary teachers, middle school and high school together, and our preschool through elementary teachers together. And that's approximately half of the employees of the school district each. And we think we could get some better articulation that way. And then there will be a common session in the middle that everyone goes to, where we'll have our guest speaker and several other things occurring. So I'm going to just give you a copy of the program for your information. And this will be posted on our website as well. And as you can see, for the elementary educators, pre-K through 5, there will be a welcome back brunch. So depending on your level, you're either treated to a welcome back to school brunch or lunch. Brunch for the elementary educators at 10:15, and then followed by the joint session for all educators at 11. We'll be introducing our Teacher of the Year there, and our keynote speaker will also be speaking at that time. That is Joel Rose. He's the co-founder of the New Classrooms Innovation Project. That happens to be the group that has created Teach to One Math at Nathan Hale Middle School, as well as other things, and very closely aligned to many of the initiatives in our strategic operating plan. There will be a session for, you'll see on the second page, there'll be a session for 6 through 12 that begins at 9:45. And then they break for the convocation joint session, or then they move to the convocation joint session, and then there is a welcome back to school lunch for those educators. So we're going to try this, see how it works, change it up a little bit. We've asked some of the usual dignitaries to do their speeches on videotape so we can show them in each session. But also so we can break the program up and keep it moving quickly. We don't have long sections of one thing. So we'll see how this works. In any event, we're looking forward to having everyone back and looking forward to the new school year. I think at this point we're at a very high level of preparation, preparedness, and ready to go.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve.
Second thing I wanted to address with you is the issue that is on all of our minds, and that's the lack of a state budget and the impending budget cuts, and of course the uncertainty over knowing how Norwalk will be affected. So, you know, we don't want to be in a position where we are doing things or taking steps that might be proven to be unjustified once the circumstances are finally settled. On the other hand, we have to try to prepare as best we can and take as many defensive measures as we possibly can. So you're aware that right now we are operating under the governor's allocation plan as a result of our legislative leadership failing to agree on a budget. There are three big variables for us in terms of effect of that. In the governor's allocation plan, we would get no Alliance District grant. We would get no Priority School District grant. Now, the Alliance grant is $1 million for us. The Priority School District grant is close to $5 million. In addition to that, the governor's allocation plan calls for our ECS to be cut by $6 million. That has implications for the city. Because the Alliance Grant is an extension of ECS for 30 districts, the 30 neediest districts in the state, that money comes directly to the school district, but it is the first to go in terms of any ECS cut. So for example, the governor made a $250,000 rescission in the budget last January. So we lost $250,000 off of our ECS grant, or off of our Alliance grant. And so that was the genesis of having to reduce 2 of the CSID positions in our schools. All of our CSIDs are funded on the Alliance grant, and some $900,000 is devoted to that. And as you know, our largest schools have their own CSID, other smaller schools share, but we have very good coverage. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, this position has demonstrated a great deal of efficacy based upon the improvements that our elementary schools are making instructionally. So we think that, you know, unless, you know, the state just goes down the tubes entirely, we are going to have a priority school district grant of some sort. And we would qualify far above others for inclusion in the priority school district program. So we're making an assumption there. We're taking a defensive position of cutting 20% of the priority school district grant because we've been told by the State Department that in their view, that would be a likely scenario. So we're in the process of doing that, or we have done that already. The outstanding issue, the biggest outstanding issue, is the Alliance grant. The Alliance grant was not reauthorized by the legislature. So it had a 5-year term, it expired, has not been reauthorized. Obviously would not be reauthorized unless the legislature came back into session and agreed on a budget. There are 30 Alliance districts. Whether or not there will be 30 in the future, we don't know. You know, if there are 20, if there are 10, that is up in the air right now. In addition to that, who the Alliance districts will be a question. Now, the State Department tells us that based upon the amount of money received and the gains in academic achievement made, we are at the top of the list. So if this was left, if the legislature simply allocated an amount of money and the State Department distributed it, we would definitely continue to be an Alliance district. However, if the legislature gets involved and there is, you know, political decision-making relative to what districts are in and which are not, that becomes another question. More importantly, though, the governor's allocation plan suggests a $6 million cut in the ECS for Norwalk. And that would have implications for both us and the city. The first $1 million, which is the Alliance grant, would go first. And then the remaining $5 million would be the city's responsibility as the city receives the Alliance grant. Now, our sense is that under almost any circumstance, we need to be prepared for some cut in the Alliance grant, in the ECS grant. And we thought, you know, we had hoped that it would at least be stable given the history of underfunding of Norwalk in the past years. You know, the indications that we have now, suggestions we have now, is maybe it won't be a $6 million cut. Maybe it'll be a $2 million cut or a $4 million cut. But even if it's a $1 million cut, we're going to lose the Alliance grant because it's going to come off the top of the Alliance grant before the city loses any more of the ECS grant. So later in the meeting, in tonight's meeting, Tom Hamilton is going to give you the monthly financial report and closeout of this year. This was subject of the Finance Committee meeting last week. And the good news is we are ending the year with $655,000. You're aware that under the law and the policies enacted by both the board and the city, we can make a 1% carryover into the non-reoccurring fund. That 1% would total $435,700 of the 655, and then 220 would be returned to the city. So under these circumstances, we're going to recommend that the $435,000 be placed into the non-reoccurring fund. And our request to the city, my request to the city will be that we be allowed to use that to fund 1/2 of the number of CSIDs that we currently have for the remainder of the year. This is non-reoccurring. Once it's gone, it's gone. If we were to carry the other half, we would have to build it into our budget for the following year. But again, we don't know if we will have an alliance grant or how much it will be. So again, this could be a very different circumstance, but we have to prepare for something based upon the best information that we have. If we were to do this, follow this recommendation, we could employ half of the CSIDs we currently have. And so instead of 8, it would be 4. The smallest schools would go from 1/2 to 0. The larger schools would share 1/2 each, but at least it would maintain we could maintain some capacity in this important area. So I would ask you to consider that as you hear Mr. Hamilton's report later in the meeting, basically asking for your blessing on this. We're trying to do this in a way that we can have as much stability as possible as we go into the school year.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski, for a very detailed explanation of what we're facing. We are facing some very challenging times, and I think everybody right now is walking on eggshells until we know what the situation is going to be. One thing that I do know is that we have developed, I think, a great working relationship between the city and the board, and we always find a way to sit down and come up with creative ways to continue the funding levels that we need to make sure that our young people have the education that we should be providing for them. And I will also commit to the board that we will continue to sit down. We will work with the board to try to make up for any cuts in any way that we possibly can. You know, it'll be a challenge, but I think we've done it in the past, and I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to do it again, hopefully without too much pain. But we are experiencing some difficult decisions, or facing some difficult decisions. I'm cautiously optimistic still that the state will come up with a budget. I have confidence that they're doing everything they can to try to resolve this issue, but until they do, we have to be prepared to sit down and roll up our sleeves, find out where we can fund different things. And, you know, one of the things that I think we've talked about is that we've been punished for being fiscally responsible and for maintaining a good fund balance, but they fail to factor into the city of Norwalk the unique challenges that we have with a very diverse student body, many of whom need special circumstances, need special attention. So we are going to do everything that we can to work with the board to make sure that we can move through this very challenging time with as little pain as we possibly can. So we monitor this on a daily basis. My finance director, me, my chief of staff, we're constantly talking about this. We're looking at every little angle that we can, and we're working with the the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities to kind of get a daily update on where we are and what we can expect. So.
Okay, thank you, Harry, appreciate it.
Thank you. And finally, I just wanted to bring to your attention that later this week, we will be holding our second annual middle grades professional learning institute, this one at Roten School on August 16th through 18th. You'll recall that we began this last year in response to concerns that were expressed by teachers in terms of being prepared to carry out the aspects of middle school redesign. And this one is just a very well-organized program. This is voluntary for teachers, but those teachers that do participate voluntarily are paid the $49 per hour professional learning stipend for attending it. Our own Suzanne Koroshetz is going to be involved in this one, and we're glad that she will continue to be associated in some small way with the school district. You can see the goals and the guiding questions, and also of great significance was the fact that the curriculum under Dr. Connor's leadership in English language arts and math was completed by the Curriculum Design Institutes this summer for grades 6 through 8. So we will finally have a English language arts and a math curriculum that will enable us to move from simply program adoption in Tier 1 to teaching to the standards and using a variety of materials, which makes this professional development, training, and enhancement of our teacher skills even more important as teaching becomes even more difficult and complicated. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to actions. The first item is the consent calendar. Listed on the consent calendar tonight are 2A, approval of personnel, 2B, approval of budget transfers, and 2C, approval of trip for the Brian McMahon cheerleading team. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Mr. Simmons moves, second by Yvel. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar? Artie?
Just real quick, personnel. I know we have Ms. Sweeters here tonight. I just want to say I've worked with her in the past, and she's an amazing person, and just happy that she's going to be moving on to a greater position.
Okay. Let's see.
There's a lag on that.
Congratulations.
No, but I'm just...
Okay, I'm noting one of the reasons why we wanted to get the guys on the phone tonight so we could go forward is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It's over 100 pages, I think.
8 pages of new appointments.
Yes.
Of teachers, administrators. One in particular, Anthony Shannon, is moving in here as Director of Labor Relations. Anthony, I've had the pleasure of working with Anthony when he was at Tom Mooney's firm. So Anthony's already had experience with our contracts. He's very familiar with them, and I think getting an in-house counsel there is going to be extremely valuable to us, so welcome aboard. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Charisse?
After.
I think after the approvals, I'd like Charisse to introduce the 2 new members of her team.
Okay. All right. So any discussion from the guys on the phone? All right. All right. Then I will proceed to a vote. Let's sort of roll call it here. Mr. Meek? Mr. Barbas? All right, the 3 of us here, all in favor, indicate, and that is unanimous, all approved. Congratulations. Therese?
Good night. I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce 2 of my new staff members, but first to acknowledge the HR team who's sitting here with you. They've been working really hard this summer. I asked them to come in just so you can see the faces of those who represent us in the district. As you know, the department, we have been restructuring from an HR office to a talent office. We've been aligning our work to the strategic operating plan, most specifically Goal 4, and we hope to be fully staffed by September. So we wanted to introduce tonight our new HR business partner, Jamie DeJesus, who will be responsible for 10 schools.
Jamie, could you just come up here? Could you both come up here so people can get you on the TV?
Jamie will be responsible for 10 schools along with our other HR business partner, Claudia, and this role will be involved in employee relations, workforce planning, legal compliance, and training, and the daily contact for those 10 schools. Attorney Anthony Shannon is joining us as our Director of Labor Relations Assistant Chief. He's the successor to the Chief Talent Officer. He will be responsible for the labor strategy of the district, Title IX compliance, and various other areas of talent. So Mr. DeJesus is coming from the healthcare field. Attorney Shannon was an attorney at Shipman & Goodwin, and he's now the Director of Labor Relations at Achievement First, and we're very excited to have them both here.
All right. Welcome aboard.
I should just mention that Jamie comes to us as a result of the assignment of Joe Rodriguez as interim principal of Rowayton School, and we're very grateful to Joe for doing this. This will be his last year with the district as he retires a second time. And Jamie essentially will fill his role under the restructured roles that Sharice mentioned to you relative to the talent model. Anthony Shannon, as Director of Labor Relations, will also be in the succession position as Assistant Chief. And our ability to have him join us is made possible by the retirement of Dr. Bob Delusky, also for the second time from a second career. And again, we're very grateful to Dr. Delusky for everything he has done and all his contributions. I can recall coming in on my first day as superintendent in July of 2015, and Bob was the only one here. And it was me and him for a few months. And again, very, very grateful for his loyalty to the district and sticking through thick and thin and to this point. Yep.
Okay, that covers personnel matters. Next item is approval of 2017 to 18 assessment calendar. That's the list that's in the packet. Are there any questions about the?
You began this practice. We recommended that you began this practice last year, and we recommend that you approve an assessment calendar each year. Mm-hmm. So you were conscious of the assessments and also reflective of our efforts to reduce assessments and give only those that are the most important and directly related to your strategic operating plan.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve the assessment calendar? Val moves. Artie seconds. All right, we'll proceed to a vote. Mr. Barbas? Take it off mute. Mute. Mike, you there? We lose him? He hit the wrong button. All right, so Mike Barbas is yes. Brian Meek? Okay, and those of us here, all in favor? All right, approved 5-0, thank you. All right, next item is approval of application for a competitive Perkins grant for development of a media pathway. Can you give us a quick summary on this one?
Yeah, Ralph, would you come up, please, for questions on this? So the Perkins grant is something we have qualified for some time. This is in addition now. It's a competitive grant as opposed to the entitlement grant that all districts receive. And the board is well aware through your workshop sessions of our efforts to develop the new media academy for which this would be used to support it.
Yes, so and every once in a while we do get the opportunity for a competitive grant with Perkins. This was one of those times. So they released it in the first or second week of July. We had about 2 or 3 weeks to put it together. But we were able to get it in and get it approved. And once again, these the grant's actually already in. We just need the approval of the minutes. But this grant will go towards the idea of actually, it's more so of a, I mean, the grant has to be closed out by September 30th, really. All purchase orders of this year have to be closed out. The grant will go towards professional development for the teachers that are involved in the media pathway. It'll go towards buying additional equipment that's needed in the media pathway to help support it, and to continue the idea of moving forward with career pathways. So once again, it'll actually also work in conjunction with linking the business ed department, doing a lot of the technical training over time, to the humanities department, who's actually doing a lot of the content. So they'll work in conjunction in a very interdisciplinary manner to develop this media pathway.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Motion to approve the application. Novell moves. Artie seconds. We'll do the same thing. Okay. All in favor. We'll start with Mr. Barbas. Thank you.
Barbas, yeah.
Brian? All right, and those in favor here? All right, again, unanimously approved. Thank you. And I do appreciate you guys on vacation and, you know, calling in to help us get these things done
Ralph,
tonight.
could you stay up for the next item, please?
Next one is approval of new classrooms Teach to One contract amendment for 17-18.
So the board is aware we've had a very successful year piloting the Teach to One algorithm math program in grade 6 in Nathan Hale Middle School. So this represents the expansion of that to 7 and 8, a full-fledged pilot. I think you're aware that we've had significant support from the Dalio Foundation to help us with this, and they will, as well as many people in the nation, will be watching very closely the full pilot, 6 through 8, school-wide pilot now at Nathan Hale, and this contract would reflect school-wide implementation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Dr. Adamowski summed it up pretty well. We were expanding to grades 6 through 8. This will actually cover the licensing as well as a professional development for all the new staff moving forward, and we look to continue to expand that throughout the district and in other middle schools as well. It's we're seeing from the data that the initial data that's coming in, it's successful, and we're going to keep tracking that as the year goes on.
I had an opportunity to go over and watch this in action over at Nathan Hale, and it was really it was fun as well as successful. You know, watching the way they had everybody in the same room, several teachers, and the kids rotating around, and I got to interview several of the kids who explained to me exactly what they do at the different stations. It's really fascinating improvement on traditional approach to doing this.
It's truly meeting the kids where they're at, and this is one example of personalized learning and how we want to move forward with that in a variety of different aspects. This is just one of those components, and we are building a second Teach to One lab downstairs right now, where the library used to be, and the library has now been moved to another Learning Commons, which is being built at the moment as well too.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So interesting. I went there also to see it, and the first thing that I noticed is that all the kids had headphones on.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought they were all listening to music and playing games. They weren't. They were actually learning, and when I spoke to the kids, they loved it.
Yeah. It's a mix. It's very interesting. There's a section of it where they're doing sort of traditional, you know, teaching.
Yep.
And then they go and they put the headphones on and they're on their computers, and then they go over another station where they have group projects where they have to figure things out jointly. Really interesting to see. All right, I got the motion, right? Okay. Motion to approve, Artie, second, Evel. All right, so this is to approve the Teach to One contract amendment. Brian? All right, Mike? And the rest of us, all in favor? Okay. Moving right along here. Okay, next is approval of NASA collective bargaining contract ratification. This is the latest contract that we have negotiated. It is a 2-year contract with our administrators. It includes their agreement to move the administrators into the State 2.0 insurance program, which is part of the way that we've addressed the budget shortfalls, assuming we don't get whacked by the state. and it's, it's a reasonable, gradual increase in percentage payment on medical benefits from 16 up to 17%, and the 2% base pay increase for each year. We think it's reasonable. It's the rates come in under the state averages, which has always been our objective here, is to try to close that gap. So I think it's a reasonable contract. And what we'd be doing tonight is approving the contract terms that are set in the summary, and then the lawyers for the union and for us will turn it into actual contract language. All right. Is there a motion to approve? Artie moves. Val seconds. Any other discussion? All right. Let's see. We'll go to all those in favor, starting with Brian and Mike. All right. Everybody else? And that is approved. Okay. Approval of school bus depot lease and sublease. That sounds like a Tom Hamilton thing. Mm-hmm. And he's already moving.
Okay, so this item is one that actually has been kicking around for, I guess, the better part of 2 years or maybe longer. It was in the law department. It actually started before I moved from the second floor up to the third floor. The genesis for it really was discussions that had taken place between the Board of Education and the city over several years ago over an apparent lack of competition when the district would go out for school bus service. And the issue of where you're going to store the school buses has always been raised as one of the key impediments to really encouraging robust competition when that service is put out to bid. As you know, we spend roughly $8.5 million a year on transportation. It's an area that we're trying to reduce and scale back to the extent we can. And so encouraging competition in future bids is certainly in the best interest of the district. And again, because we have not had a readily available site to offer to anyone who might come in with an attractive proposal, it became difficult for competitors to give you a price without knowing where they're going to put the buses and how much it's going to cost them and how long it may take them to find a location. There aren't a lot of good locations in Norwalk to store 80 buses, and so we've been at the same location that we're presently at for quite a number of years, more than 10 years, probably a lot more than that, but I know it goes back at least 10 years. So what we have before you really is two agreements that the board will be a party to, as well as the city. So these agreements actually also need to go through the Common Council because they exceed a 5-year term and involve property. It does require council approval, but it also requires board approval. So the first agreement is the base lease between the city and the board and with 332 Wilson Avenue LLC, and that's to lease the property for a 25-year term. And the second agreement is a sublease agreement between the board and First Student, which establishes the responsibilities of First Student as our subtenant to various obligations that the tenant would have under the lease with the landlord. So as a result of the new lease, what we do know is that for the first year, the district will save $56,000 in lease costs over the current expense. And going forward, the lease provides a 1.95% annual escalator, which is, we think is a reasonably attractive number to lock in at, for a long-term lease. The terms of the lease are laid out in a term sheet that the law department had prepared. Essentially, it identifies the property. There is a 5,000 square foot building there, which is used for maintenance services on the buses. There is also a fuel refueling station that's located on the property. The landlord has agreed to perform certain improvements, including repairs to the roof, maintaining the asphalt parking lot in good repair, repainting and recarpeting interior offices, landscaping and signage, and then other repairs, as is currently the case, are the responsibility of the tenant, which we have passed on to our subtenant First Student. So if there are repairs that are necessary to generally to the building or to the property, then the subtenant would be responsible for those repairs as well. I don't know if there's any questions on either of these agreements.
Any questions? I know it's taken a long time to get this thing put together. We had, you know, the environmental issues with the property and all that stuff with the city. But I commend you for sticking with this until we were able to get it completed. This is you know, an excellent example of cost stabilization for our school system. You know, we have some costs that skyrocket up and you know, you can't even control them. This locks in some nice stable costs for an essential part of our school program. So good job.
Right, and we certainly hope the next time that this service does go out to bid, we'll have more competition as a result of having a site locked in that we know that this location is available to store the buses on. So.
Right, we're not searching for a site every time we have a contract with them.
Right.
Good.
Mike, is this
Marty?
the lot on Meadow Street? Where are we at?
Yes.
Yes.
It's location is well, it's Wilson Avenue, 334 Wilson Avenue.
Right. It's right across from the old community college.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion? All right, is there a motion to approve the contract? Val moves, Artie seconds. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll start with Brian. Mike?
It took a while.
Good, better late than never. All right, the rest of us, all in favor? Approved. Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is approval of school bus, oh, wait a minute, school bus, no, I just did that. Approval of adjustment to transportation policy 3541 route regulations. I know Heidi is traveling, so could not be with us for this. I think this basically is the policy change on the courtesy passes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So just a little bit of background. This goes back to May when we did the original budget reconciliation with the amount allocated by the council, which, as you know, was a very generous amount. But notwithstanding, we had to reduce 1.2 million in adjustments. Half of that came out of adjustments in transportation. And you recall, we were very concerned that if we didn't do something in this area, we would be facing a $1 million transportation bill this year. So of the 1.2 million, 600,000 approximately was made in transportation. And the majority of that had to do with the elimination of courtesy transportation. So those are the students that do not qualify for transportation, but we were letting them get on the nearest bus to where they lived. And that represented several buses in and of itself. And there were plenty of room on the other buses. Essentially, we were putting additional buses on in order to enable courtesy transportation. So I advised you at the time that that would require removing paragraph D, 5D in your transportation policy, which allows for courtesy transportation on a first-come, first-served basis. This is apparently contemplated as temporary at the time. It's been referred to as temporary courtesy bus passes. So once we've had to, given the lateness of where we are in the year, we've had to notify the parents already. We did that earlier this summer in July, and this would formalize the adjustment of the policy.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Marty?
Gotten any feedback from parents?
We've had almost none. Now, you know, again, that isn't too surprising in the summer. I'm sure we'll find someone who who had it last year and would want it again. But no, we've had very little.
There were a couple of comments on the Facebook page from when the letters went out. People were surprised by it. I know that a lot of discussion, they were actually surprised by other elements of the policy that have been in there all along.
Yeah, I think Brenda cleared a lot of that up.
Yeah.
Another quick question, what would stop a kid from walking over to the bus stop still and getting on?
There won't be enough room on the buses.
So they would be denied?
Correct. Again, we had several buses on just for this purpose. That you know, where we have half-full buses, but we're putting more buses on because of courtesy transportation. We're trying to get the buses up to about 80% capacity.
Okay.
Now, there may be a few seats. I don't know if there are. We'll certainly let students on an individual basis, but it's not possible. It would not be possible anymore for a large number of parents to just drop their students off at a bus stop if they're not eligible for transportation.
Yeah, I would hate to see a kid standing there with parents drop them off and then, sorry, can't get on.
We're not going to let that happen, and you know, we'll transport the student until we can make arrangements with the parent. Yeah.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve the policy amendment? Val moves, Artie seconds. Any discussion? All right, we'll proceed to a vote on approving the transportation policy amendment. Brian? Mike?
Where is he, in China?
Mike? Mike Barbas? Thank you, sir. And the rest of us, all in favor? And that is approved. All right, two more business items. One is, number 9 is approval of evaluation and incentive compensation for superintendent. This one, as you know, the board established a evaluation plan, incentive compensation plan for the superintendent last year. It was based on a numerical set of calculations. So it's not a subjective evaluation, it's a purely objective evaluation. And while we were at our retreat, we got a report on the various goals and the degrees to which they were achieved that we had set last year. We did pretty well. There were 25 listed goals, I know, and we basically hit 23 and a half of them, which is pretty good. And adding up the point scores that we had built into that evaluation plan, the board evaluated and agreed that the superintendent had hit a performance scale of 82.7 against a maximum of 100. And this, what we're doing here is simply officially acknowledging that the score was 82.7 and that the superintendent's compensation plan is adjusted in accordance with the incentive provisions that are spelled out in the plan. Is there any discussion or questions on this one? No? Okay.
That was done. It was really amazing. Just a wonderful year, jam-packed, and I want to congratulate him on an excellent year and looking forward to another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. I'd also like to compliment Dr. Adamowski. We got a tremendous amount of things done in the course of the year. And, you know, when you're making a lot of changes, sometimes they're accompanied by controversy, differences of opinion, but, you know, when you look at you know, an objectives list that long and see how many of those objectives were met. You have to say that the performance level, both of Dr. Adamowski and of his central office staff, which he has done a great job assembling a really top flight group of people. When I've been in positions where I've headed up an organization, I always make a point of thanking the people under me for making me look good. You guys sitting in the audience have done a good job of making him look good and the rest of us look good. I'm very pleased to support this. So Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Artie moves, Val seconds. We'll proceed to a vote. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick, can you tell us what the incentive is?
It was 3% for I think 80 to 85 points. It's a 3% incentive bonus payment.
Okay. I'll do the math. You don't have it.
So 7,000 something, I think. Okay. It's you know, it's not a $10 million corporate executive bonus, but it is some recognition for a job well done. All right, Artie moves. Val seconds. We'll proceed to a vote on approval. Brian? Mike? All right, and the rest of us?
Job well done.
All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Congratulations.
All right, and number 10 is approval of superintendent to execute separate contract with Canon for mailroom outsourcing. Is that, yep.
This was a late addition to the agenda, and Tom will explain the circumstance.
Yeah, this is another long-sought efficiency, I guess, on my part. Again, from several years ago when I was down with the city, I had discussions with my predecessor up here, Elio Longo, and then Rich Rudel about looking at consolidation of the mailroom services. And actually, a number of years ago, we did move the city mailroom service moved from the ground floor to the third floor of this building where our mailroom is located. So we co-located what was a outsourced mailroom service by the city and a in-house operation by the Board of Education. As you know, with our custodial and maintenance bargaining group, that contract does allow for the district to outsource services if it can be demonstrated that by doing so it will result in a less cost to the district. If it's cost efficient and effective, then the district can outsource those services, provided that it's cost efficient, number one, and number two, that no one is laid off from those services. We have located other vacancies in the district, a appropriate position in Norwalk High School, custodial type position for the individual who occupies that position to move into that vacant position over there. And we've provided the cost analysis that demonstrates there's substantial savings, about a 46% savings by outsourcing these services. So there's a $47,000 cost savings as a result of outsourcing. So we are planning to go forward with this. It made sense to consolidate operations with the city, and so I had approached the city purchasing agent last May when the city was going out to bid for these services. Their contract was coming up for renewal, and I asked him if he would add the Board of Education in as an alternate to see what the price came in at. And there's good reason to consolidate these services because we have our employee, running all around town to all the various schools, and the city has their contract employee doing the same, running around to city locations. So, for instance, the city will have their employee go to the Norwalk Police Station every day to pick up the mail and deliver the mail, while we have our person go to Columbus School, which is just down the street. So it certainly makes sense to consolidate these into a joint combined operation. And so that's what the RFP that was issued by the city did. It's my understanding that this was discussed by the Finance Committee and then was brought to the Common Council earlier this month, and the Council tabled it and is going to bring it back for some sort of consideration. In the intervening period, Yeah.
Question? Somebody on the phone? Okay.
Okay, so in the intervening period, after this went to the council and the council has tabled it, it occurs to me that, honestly, I think it's appropriate for the city to have put out the bid spec covering the joint service, but then when it gets time to actually authorize and execute a contract, the city really should authorize the city portion of the contract, and our board should authorize the Board of Ed portion of the contract. That it's really not the purview of the city to make a decision about whether or not the Board of Ed should or shouldn't contract out these services. So I've asked to put this on your agenda just simply to have the authorization so we can go forward and enter a contract still, the same vendor as the city has selected, still with the same efficiencies, but have one contract that covers the Board of Education executed by the superintendent.
Okay. Any questions?
Yep.
Well,
can you or the superintendent confirm for us the reclassification of this employee in terms of the ability of that employee to do the work being asked?
In the position they're going into?
That the employee is going into.
Yeah,
anything that's going to bar the employee from actually doing that job, whether it's physically, whether it's medical, whether it's a reclassification of her title, etc.
Yeah, the facilities director did meet, I believe, with officials in our talent office to review whether or not this employee has any restrictions. They looked at the job description that the employee presently have, which involves a lot of walking and a lot of, carrying mail and so forth, picking up mail from the post office and so forth, so that the job responsibilities and the job requirements are very similar from a physical standpoint of the job responsibilities that would be encompassed for the position at the at Norwalk High School, which is a custodial position, particularly involving making sure that the restrooms and locker rooms, women's restrooms and locker rooms are cleaned and so forth. So we think this is a appropriate position for this employee to move into. That there's nothing about that position that requires any sort of extraordinary physical capabilities, anything more than the mailroom position requires, and there's nothing in the personnel files to indicate that that particular person can't complete those duties.
And how much notice did that employee receive about the change?
3 weeks' notice.
Okay. All right. Okay, is there a motion to approve the contract? Already moves, is there a second? Val? Any discussion? All right, if none, Brian, how do you vote? Okay,
Have a good night.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes.
All right, and the rest of us? All in favor? Okay, it is approved. All right, now we're losing Brian, who called in from vacation, so we will not act on approval of minutes tonight, and we're not going to have the executive session tonight, but for the edification of board members and public, there's no reason I think why we can't get the reports done. So without objection, we'll run through those and complete. Okay, financial report for June 2017.
Okay, we've given you a recap for the 16-17 year. We have now completed the year. There's a handful of transactions that may still be processed in period 13, but essentially the year is closed at this point, and any remaining transactions should not have any material impact on the numbers. What you'll see is we ended the year having spent approximately $174.9 million, which was about 98.6% of the total budget. And the district is turning back, if you will, or has unspent balance of roughly $2.4 million. The most significant portion of that, however, is related to the Special Ed Development Fund. You'll remember the agreement, the MOU between the city and the board had the city funding the first year of the Special Ed Development Fund with a special appropriation at the end of fiscal year 15-16. That money was then carried forward into the 16-17 year, which is accounts for the increase in the budget between the original budget and the revised budget. And then the board was required to appropriate funds in the 16-17 year that we expected to not spend in 16-17, but in fact to carry forward into 17-18 to fund the second year of the SPED Development Fund. So that's what we're doing, and when we get to one of the other schedules in a moment, I'll show you the roughly $1.3 million carry forward for the Special Ed Development Fund. In terms of the just high level, quickly, the results of operation, again, we came in pretty much, I would say, is about as close to budget or on budget as you can. We are turning back a small amount of money, as the superintendent indicated. We did realize some savings in our wage accounts due to higher than anticipated staff turnover, and so that generated some savings compared to the original budget. The 300 series of accounts, which is our professional and technical services, those are driven primarily by special education expenses, which, as you know, are special education expenses for the contracted services did run substantially over our budget. Now, fortunately, in the 500 series accounts, you'll see that we came in about $1.7 million with a favorable balance of $1.7 million, and that was primarily attributable to a $1.2 million higher than budgeted revenue from the excess cost grant. So the excess cost grant more or less covered what otherwise would have been a shortfall in the special ed contracted services account. There were some other areas in contracted services. Legal fees ran a bit higher than budget. We did have to cover a shortfall in the food service budget, which probably at a future Finance Committee meeting we ought to talk further about that and the implications of that. We did realize lower Medicaid revenue than we had anticipated with the original budget. Again, the 500 series of accounts, the biggest area of favorable turnback for us was from the excess cost grant. In terms of out-of-district tuition, that was essentially right on budget, so that's a welcome development. I think I reported that to you previously. And also tuition to other local education agencies was also favorable compared to budget. And finally, in the 600 series of accounts, which are the supplies and materials, we spent about $5.8 million last year, which is a couple $100,000 less than we had spent the year before. So there was a turnback in supplies and materials of about $541,000 compared to the original budget. Now, in terms of reconciling this to the bottom line of where we ended the year, again, we had about, and this is the second sheet of the recap, we had about a $2.4 million favorable balance at the end of the year. At the bottom of this, you'll see carryover requests pursuant to 10-248A, the SPED Development Fund at the $1.3 million, and then prior to that, you'll see what are essentially contingent liabilities or actual estimated liabilities for things like unemployment. We do have an issue with respect to CGS and the state that we've made a reservation of funds of up to $100,000 potentially for that. We had a $4,300 of outstanding purchase orders at the point this report was put together last week, and $49,000 of outstanding invoices. A bit larger numbers related to carryover for retirement payouts. Teachers and administrators who retired in June have the option to defer their payouts until January of 2018, so we've made a reservation of funds for those liabilities, and then we've made a reservation of funds for unsettled labor contracts. And so then that brings us to the items under 10-248A, which is the special section of state statute that allows the board to and allows the Board of Finance, or the Board of Estimate and Taxation in our case, to approve a carryover of funds of up to 1% for the Board of Education. And the memorandum of agreement on the SPED Development Fund indicates that the funds that are being carried over for that purpose do count toward that 1%. So most of the 1% that we could carry over, in fact, is tied up in the SPED Development Fund. There's then two additional items. There was one item from Brian McMahon High School, and this was just an item that fell through the cracks. They had asked for authorization to purchase MacBooks at the end of the school year. We gave them authorization, and then the purchase requisition never actually made it through the system, so it ends up on this list because the purchase order was not cut before June 30th. And then the last item is the additional carryover request that the superintendent referred to, which totals $435,000, and that brings us to the 1%. And would result in then even with that carryover, would result in a return back to the city of about $200,000. So, all said, and where we end up is, I think, in a reasonable place. Obviously, we didn't overspend our budget, which is most important, right. And we're able to turn some money back to the city, and hopefully, with approval from the Board of Estimate and Taxation, we can put in place that $435,000 to cover at least half of the cost of the CSIDs.
Okay, excellent. That's a very good result. Listening to all of those different components, you were juggling about 12 balls in the air at the same time to get all that stuff done. And, I appreciate the very effective way that you stayed on top of the special education fund. It was a major commitment from the city to help us out there. We promised them that we would manage that fund and spend it on what we said we would spend it on, and you've done that. And, excuse me, I think we really are starting to make some progress there on fixing things. We have a spectacular new chief who's coming in here to take all of these disparate parts in the financing that we've assembled and really upgrade the whole special education process. So thank you for keeping on top of that. All right. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Lyons, just to make the board aware, based upon the closeout, all right, and your blessing of it, I don't think it requires action on your part, but certainly your understanding and blessing of it, I am going to proceed with the mayor to make the request of the non-reoccurring fund for the $435,000, but we'll also proceed to adjust our number of CSIDs as we go into the year. We have a vacancy in the assistant principalship in Ponus. We have a number of CSIDs that are candidates. We hope to save one of them that way. We have a couple who do not have tenure, who will have no bumping rights, and then we have a couple who do have the right to bump into a teaching position. And we've been holding a couple of vacancies open for that contingency. So we'll go and try to do that within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. All right, item B is English Learner Support Services, Norwalk Public Schools Partnership.
Yes, I'm going to ask Helene Becker to come up. This is a grant which we are receiving. Now, you don't approve that, but given the importance of this one, we felt that acceptance as an information report would be very, very appropriate. And Helene, if you could just give the board a very brief overview
Sure.
Of what this is and why it's important.
The English Learner Support Services is a new organization formed by current and former university professors in the area last school year, so it's very new. They formed this organization to support high school ELLs with limited or interrupted education so that these students can eventually graduate. And as you probably know, in the past three or 4 years, we've received about 150 of these English language learners that fit into that category with low skills, limited education. So we're starting the program first at Norwalk High School, and we hope to expand it into Brian McMahon. So this organization, because we didn't directly receive the grant, the organization has, but they've dedicated the funds to us. They've hired experienced tutors to work with our ELLs during their study halls. And we're targeting these students who have limited education when they come to us, especially the students who come after the start of the school year. And we get many of those students, and the combination of having limited skills and then starting the school year later in the school year is a double whammy for them. So we're really targeting those students so that they can catch up in their classes. And these tutors will be directed by our ESL teachers. So working together, ELSS and the ELL department of Norwalk Public Schools, we managed to get a $25,000 grant from Fairfield County Community Foundation and a few other smaller grants. And the program starts October 2nd, and we are very excited about the potential results from this. So, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Just wanted to point out the board poured over a significant amount of data at its retreat. And you'll recall that while we were able to close about 1/3 of the achievement gap in general this past year, our high needs students, which are low income, special education and English language learners, those students, they had the greatest growth. And then as we disaggregate further and compare the growth of our English language learners to those in the state, it is significantly higher than those in the rest of the state. I think you can conclude that if one is an English language learner, Norwalk is probably the best place in Connecticut to be, given the progress in that our schools have made in getting English language learners to proficiency. And as you know, some of our most outstanding students, including the valedictorian of last year's class at Brian McMahon, started as English language learners in our school system. That did not happen by accident. We have an outstanding program, we have an outstanding staff, and under outstanding leadership of Helene Becker. And I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention, and thank you, Helene, since you're at the meeting tonight.
Good. Mr. Mayor?
I want to kind of piggyback on that. I have I'm a mentor for a young man at Norwalk High School. 5 years ago, he came here from Guatemala, didn't speak a word of English. He entered the Norwalk Early College Academy, and this coming year, which would be his senior year, he will be attending most of his classes at Norwalk Community College, carrying about a 3.8 GPA.
Wow.
And he will graduate in 4 years with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. He's an amazing young man who has grown so much over the time that I've known him, from a shy young man who would talk with his hands in front of his mouth because he wasn't sure of himself, to a very confident young man who got up at the event the other day and spoke to the crowd. So it really, you know, I agree with Dr. Adamowski. There are some wonderful things happening in the Norwalk Public Schools. And it's not happening by accident. It's happening because of the team building that we have, the professional teachers that we have, the Board of Education, and so it's very gratifying to see this.
Thank you, Harry. All right. Next item on the agenda is committee representative reports. Vel, what's going on in special ed?
Nothing, well, a lot of things. Nothing as far as the ad hoc committee is concerned for the summer. As I did last September, an email will be sent out the first or second week of September, trying to secure a date. We tend to meet on the second Tuesday of every month. to not conflict with other board committee meetings, so that way other board members can attend if they wish. The only times we do not meet on a Tuesday, on the second Tuesday, is if it conflicts with, for example, a holiday or a school vacation. That being said, once the dates are confirmed, I'll do the same thing that I did last year, which is send out an email to some of the education stakeholders in the board and the central office, indicating what the dates are for our meetings and what the agenda topic will be for each of those meetings.
Okay.
That's for the ad hoc committee. As far as the Norwalk Facilities Construction Committee, the July meeting was canceled. I attended the August meeting, but we didn't have a quorum. But we, those of us who were there, we just discussed some of the items so we can have our next meeting will be, I guess, more efficient at the next meeting.
Okay.
And that's it for committee reports.
Okay, good. Let's see, I'll report on negotiations. As you know, we voted to approve the NASA contract tonight. We have settled agreement with the NFEP union, which we'll be bringing to the board soon. We've also reached agreement with the custodians union, which we'll also be bringing to the board relatively soon. So we've just about cleared the deck, I think, of our outstanding union contracts. Of course, we are talking to the NFT to put into contract language the agreement that we reached with them back in July. But just about ready to wrap up a lot of the stuff for negotiations. Artie, any report?
I've got a couple items. Okay. Number one, curriculum, and I don't think I reported on this because we've had a meeting. Last one was in June or July. July. As you know, we've been looking at a fourth grade resource for social studies because of one that we had pulled.
Right.
We finally found one that we all agreed on, and we approved it.
Oh, okay, good.
So that will be purchased. I believe did we purchase it yet? Yeah. So we're all set with that.
Good.
On athletics, we still have a slight issue, and I talked to Dr. Costanzo about it, with the swimming pool, handing it over to the city. Doug Marchetti he was the swimming pool supervisor, and so we were paying him. So now, how are we going to handle that? Is there going to be a new supervisor? Does he still keep the role, and how does he get paid? Is he getting paid by the city and the Board of Ed? I don't know if that's legal. So these are still issues that we have to work out.
I think we're still in discussions with that and trying to figure out how it's all going to work together.
Right.
It's just an open item, so I just want to let everybody know, some of the effects of the change.
Right.
Nothing negative. And finally,
Gentlemen,
who?
it's Mike Purvis, Facilities Chair. I just want to let you know I've been in discussions with Leisha King, and I think we have a plan that will make everybody happy for the operatorship of the pool. I just need to confirm. I actually need to reach Doug, which I haven't been able to do. But I think we have a plan, and everyone's going to be happy.
Okay,
Good. Anything else?
And safety.
Yep.
Sat with Joe Rios. A couple of good things are happening. Of course, the first thing is the Raptor system that's going in.
Right.
Will be in place month of September. It's going into all the schools. Great system. It's being used in Newtown, Greenwich, and a lot of other schools. So that's one great thing. Also, the Anonymous app. I know Mrs. Keegan was here before. She talked about bullying. The Anonymous app will be rolled out to the school, and it's basically anybody who's being bullied can notify an administrator anonymously. So a lot of good things about it. I think we can bring awareness, and we can really help that population not be bullied anymore. So it's good things are there. So it's going to be rolled out soon.
Good.
I'm very happy about that.
Positive uses of technology.
It really is, and every kid is on there. Also, the Warrantable Act. It's something that we tried last year, but we didn't get a chance to roll it out. There's money in the budget. We're going to roll it out to McMahon and NECC. Warrantable is the part of, remember back in 2013 when we put the safety committee together because of the Newtown issue, tragedy. What Warrantable does is it warns students that there is somebody in the building, somebody outside the building, and it's text messages that go out. And actually Warrantable was developed by, I think, McMahon students. Correct? Yeah. McMahon students. So I believe we have money in the budget, right, for this year to pilot it? That's what I was told. Yes. Right.
All right.
And so a lot of colleges use an app like that.
Right.
So we'll be able to take advantage of technology that way. So it's really good.
Good.
And finally, video system is going out. We're switching over to IP cameras that are all digital. And so we can see a pimple on somebody's nose. In other words, you know, it's no more all the pixelated video that we get now.
I've looked at the you know, the low quality videos.
Correct. So we
Best
can
to clear herself.
see who's coming in. Number one, it's cheaper. You know, number two, it integrates with the police department because it's IP address driven, so it's not just a closed system.
Right.
So it really helps us, and it helps the police department. We can communicate now. And that's about it.
Okay. Those are great developments.
Good things are happening. Yeah. You know, we put money away, $2.5 million a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Finally, you know,
Everything's coming to fruition now.
All coming together. And I'm very happy about that.
That's great. Mike, anything else on facilities?
Yes, we were making, I think it was really there are new schools projects that really now is in the city's hands, but I am still participating in the process. We have a session where we've gone out to put bids out for architectural services for both of those projects, and they're set, each one is a separate bid. I think we have about 14 applicants for each one, and many of whom are the same. And the committee is going to be evaluating them on Friday. We're going to shortlist, and then we're going to interview them for a shortlist, I think, next Thursday.
Okay, excellent. All right, any board member announcements?
I have one.
Yvelle?
I just want to, she's in attendance. We have our new Chief of Specialized Learning and Student Support Services, Mrs. Yvette Gorovich. She was appointed in July at our special meeting. I just want to give her a round of applause for welcome. And looking forward to working with you in September.
Excellent. I only have one thing I wanted to say. As I was sitting down to have dinner tonight, trying to rush a dinner in before coming here, my daughter's Chihuahua got out of the house. And I proceeded to go on a wild chase all around East Norwalk by car and foot and through backyards and everything else, trying to get this doggone dog back. And I was pleasantly surprised. Cars stopped all over the place, and people jumped out of their cars to try to help me round up this dog. And I'm running around so much. When we finally finished, I had to go back and change my clothes because I was sweating. I just wanted to mention that there was one young man, a guy named Chris Buzzio, who is a senior at Norwalk High School, going into his senior year, plays several sports, may try to get a baseball scholarship. I discovered after he recovered the dog, we put his bike in my car and drove it. He lives right up the hill from the city hall here, who took off across Shorehaven Golf Course at a clip after this dog. And I saw them go, and I figured we're never going to see that dog again. And a few minutes later, apparently the dog had gone into the bushes, and Chris cornered him, threw his sweatshirt on him, gathered him up, and brought him back. So it was a great example of good Samaritans out there, a whole bunch of people that were stopping their cars to try to recover this dog. And I just wanted to thank Norwalk High School student Chris Buzzio for retrieving the dog and eventually allowing me to get to this meeting.
I could add a little anecdote to that. Mm-hmm. The last time I ran across Shorehaven Golf Course, I was chasing a guy that bailed out of a stolen car, and I didn't catch him.
All right.
That's right.
Mike, anything to add?
It's true.
Mike Barbas?
On the corner on Old Saugatuck.
All right, I'll take that as a no. All right. I think that concludes the business that we can do at tonight's meeting.
Good.
Yes. Motion to adjourn from Mr. Kasimis. Seconded by Yvelle. All in favor? Aye, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Later on.